Trepang2 is a freshly released first-person shooter by Trepang Studios. In case it's not obvious from the first 5 seconds, it's heavily inspired by F.E.A.R. You slide around shooting and kicking bad guys in slow motion while getting called out for your illumination obsession. The game's setting is simple on the surface. There's a feud involving shadowy groups vying for world domination/peace, and it's all played out to the soundtrack of hand grenades and 7.62mm rounds flying through the air. Just like F.E.A.R, Trepang combines regular military combat with supernatural elements. Being an augmented super soldier blasting away soldiers is just one half of the experience. Exploring spooky mystery Soviet bunkers is the other. It's not just a one-to-one ripoff, though. There are plenty of additions, however big or small, which make it a unique experience. You have a slow motion ability, just like F.E.A.R, but you also have a cloaking ability, and they work independently from each other. So you can use both, or just one, depending on your situation. Dual wielding is also featured, but not just for the pistols. You can dual wield nearly any gun you come across, even the assault rifles. Just be prepared not to hit anything, unless you go into slow motion. And then there are the other additions, like the simulator wave defense mode, or the hub-style mission management. Everything critical plays out in a safe house. Safe house. Safe. It's all very simple. You choose your mission, the difficulty, and then you pick your loadout, which will grow the more missions you complete. You can even customize your clothes. And even though you'll usually only be seeing your hands, it's still a nice feature. Drip, I believe it's called. You have a handful of main missions that advance the story, and several side missions, which are mainly there for you to unlock new weapons, attachments for said weapons, or more drip. Most of these side missions follow the format of hack these 3 things and prevent them from being counter-hacked, but there are a few which are a little more unique. Difficulty also matters. Certain equipment or clothing requires you to do specific missions on a higher difficulty. Fun fact, Rage mode isn't overselling itself. When I was playing through it, just for one mission, I reached a point where my whole playstyle changed from epic pro gamer killer to ultra bitch hit and runs, setting up in stealth to do as much damage as possible and then running away. In this specific clip, I took out a whole squad as quickly as I could and only pounced back in when I heard the last enemy announce that he is alone. Otherwise, I'd get turned into mincemeat. If you're not a very experienced FPS player, then don't worry. The rest of the other difficulties are quite reasonable and perhaps even forgiving. Trepang is an entirely single-player experience, no multiplayer or co-op of any kind. There aren't microtransactions or any sort of in-game pop-up alerting you to the hot new $5 DLC for you to buy. It's all very much in the spirit of mid-2000s shooters. And it carries that spirit well. How many games these days feature an unlockable cheat menu? There is a campaign and a story for you to sing into, and it's alright. If you've played enough of these types of games, then you can probably see where the plot is going from early on, but that doesn't really detract from the game, and it can still surprise you when you least expect it. And if you're interested in deep lore, there are some old-school intel pieces scattered around the missions for you to pick up. If you want a closer look into the world of Trepang, then keep an eye out for glowing blue lights. Though you might want to have a guide on your second monitor. Because, if you're like me, you'll scour each level, pixel by pixel, and still manage to miss a couple. Part of the blame goes to my lack of skill. The other part goes to the environment, specifically the lighting. One moment, you're fighting in a modern, well-lit resort, and then next, you're in an underground medical facility, stumbling over dead bodies because you can't see anything. It's really dark at times. You get a flashlight, but it's a little lacking in power. This is okay if you're trying to get a horror atmosphere, but I found myself accidentally sliding into an armed PMC soldier when I thought there was nothing in my way more than once. Your vision brightens up massively if you go into slow motion for some reason too, so my go-to method for seeing things was to give up on the flashlight entirely and just engage the Jimmy Neutron Brain Blast mode, so I could better shoot the heads off of the elite Special Force LARPers who were quad NVGs. Actually, wait. Why can't I have one of those? That's about the only thing I want to whine about. Outside of an occasional funny ragdoll, the game works fine. Great, even. Everything about the gameplay radiates dopamine moments. Sliding off a balcony into a crowd of dudes, shooting several in the head while you're slow motion diving in the air and then plopping the rest into mist with a SPAS 12 is something that rarely gets old. You can shoot grenades out of the air, pick enemies up as meat shields and then toss them back into their friends with a primed grenade and then shoot that grenade to make it explode prematurely. The list goes on and on. If you wanted to live out the imagination of you being a badass that shoots all the bad guys and doesn't afraid of anything while looking cool as frick, then this is the game for you. The environment is also partially destructible, more easily with higher caliber weapons and explosions, and even if you can't outright destroy something, you can still chip away at it and partially ruin it. It's always nice to see environmental destruction. It really helps sell the uncontrollable and chaotic nature of gunfights. Your arsenal is decently extensive without being overwhelming. Every weapon has a specific purpose, and you can adjust it to your preferred style with various attachments. Nothing ever becomes obsolete. The starting pistol and SMGs that are found everywhere remain viable choices up until the very end. You also don't need to consult an Excel spreadsheet like you usually have to these days. You're not decided between 12 different assault rifles, there is just an assault rifle. You know what its combat role is, you know how it handles, and all of that helps you make the split-second decision where you pick it up over any of the other weapons lying around on the ground. Which, in a chaotic combat scenario, is the most important thing. Even a pistol has a solid punch to it. It's not a pea shooter like you'd expect. In fact, it might be the most universal jack-of-all-trades weapon in the game, and I found myself bringing it along on almost every mission. One shot to the helmet and a follow-up to the exposed cranium is all you need. It's accurate, reliable, has a lot of ammo, and if you want to, you can make it fully automatic. Perhaps one of the best pistols in video games I've seen. The combat is helped by the sound design. The weapons feel and sound weighty, in real or slow motion. The music ramps up when a wave of enemies comes rushing at you and abruptly fades out when you finish painting the walls red. It's almost like the soundtrack represents your character's adrenaline rush with how drastically it shows up and then leaves. Your opponents come in various flavor of human tactical operators and the occasional non-human. That might sound like a spoiler, but considering that these differently abled persons get featured in the launch trailer and even in the game's flipping launch menu, yeah, I'm not taking blame for spoilers. Yes, you do fight a Mothman. Welcome to Trepang. Human enemies vary in appearance and threat level. You have the basic mall cop dudes who don't even have any helmets and use basic SMGs and pistols, and then you have the elite death squads that can murk you in a few shots if you're not careful. And then there are colossal juggernauts and riot shields and other shooter men to take care of, and occasionally a suicide Russian cultist. There are also high value targets in certain levels which act as little mini-bosses, some of which you can only fight on certain difficulties, and you might just die before getting said mini-bosses to spawn. Some of them have an actual role in the plot, but they're mostly there for you to shoot a unique looking bad man, or to provide funny haha gamer references. You're not getting out of here alive. I feel obligated to talk about the story at least a little bit. As I mentioned before, you're a super soldier with a mysterious background. At the start of the game, you're held prisoner by the Horizon Corporation, a megacorp led by a CEO who wants to rule the world and is being opposed by Task Force 27. You break out, get rescued, and then spend the game disrupting Horizon's plans, uncovering all the nasty business they're involved in, before finally moving in to finish them off. Even though it might not be an earth-shattering premise, it does have a few twists here and there, especially at the end. I'm not going to spoil anything, but you might very well start the game thinking that you're about to go on a very basic shoot-em-up adventure with a generic good guys versus bad guys team, only to end up with a slightly different conclusion. Perhaps the faceless woman isn't to be entirely trusted, but then again, can you really trust a bald man either? At least you get a loyal helicopter pilot all to yourself who will do his best to drop you a crate full of medkits even if he's being actively chased. What a lad. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to find out more, then you'll have to get the game yourself, teehee. Just remember that like F.E.A.R, Trepang is a bit campy. A little goofy. It likes to have a laugh. Lol. Your primary enjoyment from Trepang will of course come from plunging into the role of Max Payne on steroids. The main game with all the side missions on a high difficulty took me about 9 hours to beat. If you don't enjoy slamming your head against a wall just to get a different pair of pants, you might be able to shave off like an hour. Once you're done and got the special secret ending cutscene from finding all the semi-hidden drones in the various server missions, you can move on to the simulator. There are no more voices talking in your head, well, not in the game at least, so you're free to indulge in your bloodlust without anything weighing you down. And for the ultimate messing about, there's also a sandbox mode, which lets you spawn everything and anything in the game. It's a simple but fun FPS. There's no live service, no early access eternal drip feed, just you and a bunch of rooms full of people to kick and shoot to death. If you're interested and still not convinced, there is a demo available for you to try out. That's all I have to say about Trepang. It's good. Play it. Try it. Have fun. I'll see you next time.